I'm Primal Piggy. Thank you for joining me for another BDSM United podcast. Well, I don't often do book reviews, even though I have a lot of books in my library and I have a lot of different, a lot of different resources that I use when I'm researching for podcasts. But today I wanted to talk about book that I read and I found really useful called Existential Kink. The subtitle is Unmasking Your Shadow and Embrace Your Power, a method for getting what you want by getting off on what you don't. They call it a smart, sexy guide to embracing the repressed, the tabooed, and the often unwanted aspects of ourselves so we can discover our inner power and finally live the life we deserve. Now, I'm not trying to get into religion, but I want to give you a bit of context to the a resource that's really good for us kinky BDSM people. This is something that I personally use and I continue to use to help me become more accepting of my kinks. Oftentimes, the worst kink shamer can be ourselves being ashamed of our own kinks. In the astrology world, the season that we just came out of was the season called the Scorpio season. It was in these winter type times. It's a time for looking inwardly and working what is inside us. In pagan circles, they call this shadow work because the inward parts of us are veiled in mystery. We can't simply look in a mirror and see a reflection of these inner things. In the Christian world, they typically refer to one's body as a temple filled with a spirit. To them, this shadow work is an inner spiritual work. Regardless of what religious system you come from or use, it's inside us, behind a cloak, veiled behind a cloak of mystery, where our kinks and our fetishes exist. Oftentimes, they're a symptom of something that's rooted deep in there. Whether you use psychology, religion, or whatever, you have to dig deep inside to figure out why you have the kinks. And hopefully, instead of trying to fix them, you learn to love and accept them. Because kink is a whole lot of fun. The resource that I use to do this shadow work is a book called Existential Kink. And it's a bit of a complex topic. So we're going to look at a bit from the author themselves from a Q&A that they did. The author uses the term existential kink to mean both a specific meditative practice that they teach and also a general attitude towards life that's all about dissolving negative patterns by being willing to uncover and celebrate previously unconscious pleasure that we actually kind of paradoxically uh, take in those very same yucky patterns. So, by negative patterns, we mean common troubles like not being able to make above a certain smallish amount of money each month, no matter how hard you try, or perpetually dating people who end up being an uncanny resemblance to one of our abusive parents, or feeling stuck with certain health or weight conditions, having intuitive or creative blocks. These are the kind of things that tend to afflict all of us at some point, if we're honest. And if we're extra super honest on a level below our usual awareness, we all take a freaky, kinky, sadomasochistic delight in our own afflictions, which is why we end up with them again and again. So, existential kink and as an attitude isn't entirely new. It is rooted in psychology, rooted in spirituality. And the fact is that human beings have a major habit of taking unconscious pleasure in bad stuff, especially the bad stuff in our lives. And it was well known to founding giants of psychology like Freud, Jung, and others. Freud called it a psychic masochism. Jung recognized it as the shadow. All of these psychologists recognize that a major component of helping people involves getting them to acknowledge and take ownership of this kind of weird underlying desire for and pleasure in stuff that they hate or that they feel very frustrated by. It's strange, but it's true. And we have all learned firsthand by applying the insight of existential kink to our own lives that bad relationships, health, and creativity problems that plague us for decades. However, the major insight has been barely discussed in self help books, and most modern therapists tend to ignore how much we really enjoy being and playing the victim on an unconscious level. It's as an insight, it's very, very offensive to our ego. The idea that on some level we could want or enjoy the awful things happening to us in our lives. We tend to think that we only want or enjoy good things, or that we should only want good things, but doesn't. But it's a normal part of human nature. We all do it. And there really doesn't need to be any shame or blame at all that we like the bad stuff in our lives on some level. In fact, setting aside shame and blame allows us to make the enjoyment conscious and therefore lets us remove its power to control us. So, scary or not, the author makes the argument that it's very important insight to integrate into how we live our lives. So, as Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and it will cause, and you'll call it fate. He was really right about that. In other words, as long as we have unconscious, those are repressed, denied, or disowned enjoyment in some bad things in our lives, we'll keep seeking that very same bad thing out. We'll perpetuate it without even realizing what we're doing. The good news is that the minute that we're willing to make that previously unconscious pleasure conscious, the minute we're willing to deliberately celebrate it and savor it, we create a massive interruption. We allow ourselves to finally receive the dark secret joy that we've been seeking. We let the desire that motivated the negative pattern be fully known and satisfied, and we're free to move beyond it and create something new. So, um, so existential kink is about um, recognizing the parts of ourselves that are the shadowy parts, the dark parts, the not so much the bad parts, even though they're the things that happen to us that we oftentimes feel are bad. And so um, somebody asked the author, "Are you saying that everyone who experiences some hardship in their life, like poverty, on an unconscious level desires and enjoys it?" And what the author's response was really good. She says, "What I'm saying is that there's unconscious factors at work in generating all situations, including all hardships, and that those unconscious factors can be discovered and worked with to spark change. Every difficult thing in life, whether it's poverty or racism or sexism, or a bad relationship or health concern or creativity issues due to childhood wounds, all of these obviously are not solely individual inventions. They also include a vast involvement from the collective unconscious, the collective shadow, as Jung would say, which tends to repeat very scary patterns over and over, like war and slavery. In other words, none of us individually invented these dark secret desires for painful things in our lives, and none of us is individually solely responsible for the fact that they exist or that we experience them. In other words, we're not victim shaming you for being a victim. But the thing is that as physicists like David Bohm have shown, reality is holographic. This means that we're all part of the whole, and we each contain the whole of reality within us, including the very dark stuff. So, yes, painful problems with that are indisputably collective creations like wealth inequality and poverty. They also involve a personal unconscious element that can be discovered and healed because each of us is part of that collective. We're inclined to think that healing of these mass collective shadow issues can only begin on an individual level with individuals involved in them. Historically speaking, positive evolutions in collective consciousness, like humanism or of the European Renaissance, tend to start with just a handful of people. So, what we're saying is there's absolutely nothing shameful or blameworthy or wrong about the unconscious desire and enjoyment of something that, for the conscious mind, is quite painful or dark or frustrating. In fact, believing that it's shameful or blameworthy or wrong to desire or enjoy some dark and terrible pattern in one's life is exactly what keeps that enjoyment unconscious, such as in being repressed, denied, disowned, and therefore lets it keep shaping our fate, driving our decision in painful ways, and ultimately molding our whole collective history into something rather shockingly brutal. The author doesn't offer this insight as a tool to taunt others with it, and it's pointless as far as the author believes, and actually kind of mean to use it that way. It's not necessary for someone to accept a whole metaphysical theory in order to work with something like existential kink and have it help them. But I've found that it has helped me come to terms, maybe not with everything in my life, with every frustration, but or every painful thing that happened to me. But it has helped me come to terms with the fact of the dark of in taking ownership and loving the dark parts of myself, the dark parts of my ego, loving myself as a sadist, loving myself as a masochist, loving myself as a kinky, freaky, nasty person. I love that part of myself just as much as I love the empathetic, compassionate, wholesome parts of myself as well. So I just wanted to briefly give you this tool, bring it to you. Is it a perfect tool? No. It's a book with human ideas and drawing from science, drawing from psychology. It may not work for everyone. The author is Carolyn Elliott. She's a PhD, uh, and she offers this guide, Existential Kink, for bringing our shadow into the light, inviting us to make conscious the unconscious, and asking us to own parts of our subconscious pleasure that we get from the painful patterns of our existence. It offers practical advice, it offers meditations, so we truly see our shadow side's guilty pleasures. We love and we accept those parts of us and we integrate them into our whole being. And therefore, we bring to life raw, hot, glorious power that we all have to get what we really want in our lives. Is this book going to fix everything in your life? No, but it's going to bring a great, um, potent form of magic, of allowing you to do that inner spiritual work, do that inner shadow work. It's going to be a really great tool to use. It has been for me, and I think that it would really work for you too. So I'll just offering this as my book review for Existential Kink, Unmasking Your Shadow and Embrace Your Power. We're not sponsored by this book for today's episode. This is just my honest. I found a tool that was useful for me, and I'm passing it along to you. I will add an affiliate link to the book, an Amazon affiliate link in the description of the podcast and around the web. Feel free to use that. It, Amazon affiliate links don't really give us very much back, but every little bit helps. I'm Primal Piggy. You can find all of our resources. This has been a BDSM United podcast on our website, www.bdsmunited.com. It's been a joy bringing this tool that I found useful for me to you and just offering it to you. Perhaps you will find it useful too. It's been a joy talking to you today, and I'll talk to you again soon.